Hey, ladies.
Hey,
How is everyone doing today? Miss JJ, Miss Emmy?
I'm good. I am so happy to be here.
I'm
Mm.
fabulous.
Oh my
Another,
goodness.
so happy to be here.
Oh, I love that. You know what? Today is a great way. Let's go outside of the US. I think it's time to go and have someone who is from our neighboring friendly country from the north. And
We're traveling. We're
we're going to
traveling.
Canada today.
Grab your passports, ladies.
Oh they are a US friendly country. So, we are so excited to have Cindy Sims with us.
I
She's
know.
awesome.
Yes. I got to tell everybody about her. Are you ready?
Okay, tell everybody about
Okay.
Cindy.
So I'm going to tell her. I'm like, okay, so Cindy is the CEO and founder of Team CarePal. It's a company dedicated to supporting the millions of caregivers across Canada, but it also works in the United States because she has an app, but we'll get to that. The inspiration to create Team CarePal, of course, was her own caregiving experience. Her journey began with her daughter, who was born 2.5 months early, and then continued as she stood by her grandparents and her aunt's bedside during their end of life stages. Now, Cindy says the journey as a caregiver has been a mix of vulnerability, joy, heartache, and connection, but has influenced her perspective on life, family, and the significance of empathy. Cindy, we love you already.
We do love
Cindy also
Welcome,
is a fantastic, she's like a business mentor, but she's a fantastic friend. So Cindy, we are so glad that you're here.
Ladies, can I talk now? I just love you all so much. That was brilliant. And I'm just so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
So Natalie usually says, okay, let's hear about it. Let's start with birth and let's just skip right over to the good part. Well, let's tell us about caregiving.
You became a caregiver.
Yeah, so, I was born 18 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. So your skincare regimen. Everybody's going to want to get on YouTube and be like, how does a girl have no wrinkles? Love it.
Yeah. Okay. So ladies, skip into the good part. I married my high school sweetheart. Love him. And I know. And I still really like him.
Oh, that is so neat. Thank you,
I
Jim.
know. 22 years. Anyways, yes, we went and we banged out, a baby girl right away. There was no waiting for us. But my sweet baby girl came 2.5 months early. So she was 2.5 pounds. We were just 20 years old, freshly married,
Wow.
and then we were in these hospitals. So this was 2 years ago. And I know things progressed quite a bit in healthcare since then. But back then, we didn't have cell phones, or you're not Googling things, or the connection wasn't there either. It's not like you could just wake up and text a girlfriend or call a girlfriend, right? And so we were immediately rushed, I was on bed rest. We were immediately rushed to another city, hours away from where we lived. So we were away from our home, our family, our friends. And, I was on bed rest for quite a while. And then she just came, I happened to have a tumor inside my placenta, the whole thing, right? So there's just no denying her. She was just spitting out into this world when she wanted to. But she's good. She's great. But during that time, that was really, really hard because of the lack of connection that I didn't have with my family and my friends. I really went right into postpartum depression really heavily. We didn't have a lot of support in the city. I was so young. I didn't know that there was support. I didn't know you could ask for things. Nobody told me.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of taking it day by day. There's so many unknowns. You don't know, and especially with a preemie, right? So she's, intubated and gavage fed and all the things, and got to fatten her up and get her all juicy. But I was just all alone. And, I just spent a lot of my time. If I wasn't by her bedside, I was somewhere crying, and then we spent all of our time, I was driving my husband because he found a job in the city because we needed money. And so I spent my time driving him to his work and then to the hospital. So I was on the road for 5 hours a day in heavy city traffic, just trying to make the rounds. And then all our money went to parking and gas. And so I remember, having $1 in the cafeteria and looking at the apple or the coffee. And of course I'm 20, so I guarantee you it was coffee, ladies. I'm just saying, but those, and I remember, bathing, in bathrooms, hospital bathrooms. I had my backpack and I had my soaps, and I just, people would be banging on the door and I'm trying to brush my teeth, like this is just how I lived in these hospitals. And I didn't know it was just I was so low. I was so sad. I was so scared and I was so alone.
Yeah.
And, my baby girl, we got her home after a couple months and then 3 days later, she quit breathing on us. So that was scary. Yeah. So ambulance and little preemies, they tend not to breathe. Like she just had a little chest infection, but preemies just kind of stop breathing. They don't think they should continue like the rest of us, cough it out, make a go of it, but they just kind of go, okay, that's enough. So you kind of pinch her, you get her screaming, and you make it to the hospital. And you keep pinching her so she keeps breathing. But it was a really scary, another couple of days, and then we were in the hospital for another month because she's so tiny, And by then you're so stressed out, and again, you just don't know anything. It was just so overwhelming.
But let me ask you this, because I'm like an interrupting cow.
She is, Cindy.
Move. She is. Move.
Well, because here what I'm thinking, what I hear you telling me is your family, there's not close family connections that are there to support you. And there's all that. So that's fine. We don't have to go into that. So this is kind of, because this speaks to kind of family dynamics and how do people support. But, some people may say, oh, you're a mom. And the reality is when you have, we think about caregiving and people talk about who caregivers are. You, at this point, an individual who has a child who may have disabilities, I would count a preemie into this because there's so much more involved medically. There's so much more for supports and services that child may need based on them being born so early. And so where was the hospital social worker to support you and your husband? Was there
anybody that was saying, hey,
it sounds like you live out of town or a distance away, and they're not there sitting beside you saying, hey, here you go. Here's some resources that I can help you get hooked up with to make your life easier. And here's some counseling, by the way, for your postpartum.
So right. That would have been amazing. There was some high level questions, when we were fist bit into the system, I remember somebody coming and being like, are you going to be okay? And at that point in time, I was like, no, I got this, I'm okay. Right. But there was no follow up. I had no idea this was going to be months. I had no idea this was where was somebody coming to check on me, because I'm 20. I don't, I'm trying to be all brave and, I'm a mom now and I got this. Right.
You're faking.
And it was just, and it isn't until now, and we got her through everything we did. But it wasn't until now, and this is why I volunteer at the Ronald McDonald House here in Edmonton once a week. I take 4 hours out of my life, which is really hard to do right now. And I go there and I just love on these families. I didn't know that, existed for me back then, but I do know, had I known, it would have been a game changer for me. It would have brought me to my knees, just like these families, when I walk them through the door and they don't even know, that this place exists. And they're like, seriously, you're going to feed me? And I'm like, yes. And I'm going to pour your coffee and I'm going to, I'm going to do all the things for you. You just look after your babies, and so this is, again, that impact, it's life changing. People need to know about resources, supports. They need to know these things are out there.
That's really and that's what we find is that it is out there, but if you don't ask the right question or someone doesn't follow up with you, you can't find it. So, and when you share the story about taking the shower, bath, brush your teeth in the bathroom, that kind of touches, and that's not just with a preemie, that's with all kinds of people that are going through caregiving. You're kind of like, okay, where can I take where can I get my shower at? Okay, well, it's the hall bathroom. So that's everybody, Cindy. Wow.
It just became a thing, and with her, she eventually had to get some neck surgery done, and it was another hospital, another state, but it was a long time getting her, but she's good now. But there's just a lot of pain points with that one. So I think that really impacted me moving forward with the rest of my family when they, started, my caregiving journey evolved. Right. And it does.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I do believe I carried some trauma with that one because, ladies, I didn't even recognize myself that I was a young caregiver until about a year ago. When I spoke of my caregiving journey, it was always my grandparents, my mom having surgery, my aunt going through breast cancer. It was nothing my daughter never came up. In my mind, I was just a mom. And here I am, advocating for caregivers, and I myself didn't even recognize it.
Wow.
Mind blowing for me. And it wasn't until I started diving into trauma. It's like my mind was like, no, we're not going there because there's a lot behind that door. You experienced a lot, so we're just going to bury it, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Oh, yeah.
so yeah, when I opened that up, I was like, whew, there's a lot of emotion in that one.
So I'm kind of curious because we always ask, this is a question. So you're so young. I love the high school sweetheart. You're 20, you have this baby. How is this with you and this young love? Like, you guys are married, you guys are you're driving 5 hours. How is that? Because you're married 22 years now, but how is that? Like, how does that build, strengthen, like, you know, what does that
impact
do to
your
marriage?
relationship?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, ladies. Like, I tell you, and our needs are we're very different people. We're very polar opposites, which I think is why we do so well. But because of that, we really had to communicate like right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like, because he would be like, what do you mean you're like sad? Like, he'd be all confused. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I'm so full of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just have to, we learned very quickly how to communicate, like really quickly. That probably like triggered, and maybe even that helped us, succeed to where we are today, because we had to get on board with that communication very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, our needs were very different in that. And, in a sense, we were just surviving. So we couldn't really even sit with each other in that either. You were just like putting your, the needs first, like, we got to do this, we got to do that. So it was a lot. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
I couldn't even imagine just having a baby, especially your first one. My oldest is 22 also. So that was just mind-boggling within itself. And then all these hormones, and then having a baby in the hospital, I just couldn't even imagine. And that is such a need that is out there. A lot of moms don't feel like I'm a caregiver, but they are. And that's for the rest of us to help out also, and kind of take up the slack like you're doing.
And I think empathy really needs to come to it too, because everybody's going to feel something different in that journey. Just because I felt this way doesn't mean, another lady is going to feel something, the same way. So we were in the hospital, obviously, over Christmas, and my first Christmas married with my baby, but like, she's in another city, and, my husband just wanted to go home and see his mom for a day or two, and that was the most crucial, like, I was like, I just wanted to get back to her. I didn't even care. And I had some people say, well, what does it matter? Like, she's not even going to notice if you're there or not, or like, and I was like, oh, I'm so broken right now. I'm like, get me in the car, get me back there. I don't even care. I'm just going to sit here for months. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. So you have these other people, you mentioned it. So you have grandparents, you have aunts, your mom during surgery. So you, right off the bat, you're 20 and you get this, caregiving. Hey, here you go. Here's a fire. Jump into it. Dumpster fire.
Caregiving.
You're like, here's your dumpster fire, Cindy, of caregiving. So as these new, I'll call them adventures, but they're journeys occur, is it natural that are you an only child, or do you have other siblings?
Yeah, great question. I have two brothers, one older one younger one, but my older one lives in Sweden. So he's like really far away.
He doesn't count.
He's taking long distance to the next level.
Right.
Yes.
So were you just immediately like, okay, Cindy's going to take care of us? Is that kind of how it evolved, or how did you get the position?
Yeah, because what's the time difference? So you have your daughter, and then the next caregiving kind of like the call comes. The
next one would probably be a grandparent. It was about 5 years later. So, we had another baby in there. After we got our baby girl home and healthy and everything like that, like, my husband didn't even ask if, I was working. Like, there was never a conversation. It's like, he knew I'm caring for my babies. Like, try taking them from me now. It's not going to happen. Like, this is my life. So yeah, I naturally just became that for my entire family as well, right? Because I was at home, I was very involved in the community, right? I was the camp counselor, all those things, sat on the boards, the school boards, got involved, did all the stuff. And so that, and then, it was really important to me. I was brought up and raised that family was really important. We always had family dinners every Sunday after church at my Oma's house. We had the soup and the sandwiches with all the cousins, the Dutch meatball soup. Like, we were very traditional in that way. Family was a really big deal. And we had a huge family. So, I mean, you showed up, right? And so, yeah, I just naturally was that caregiver. And, when the family needs, this was needed, I came in, like, I got this. Like, I know you guys are working, or, this is my role. I can fill it. So, yeah, it started right away with a grandparent. And, at her end of life stage, and it was my mom's mom. And my mom was an ER nurse for 25 years before she retired. And so she had a lot of beautiful experience that she could share with me, because there's so much unknown in that moment. Like an end of life stage is very different again for everybody. And so she was just so gracious and empathetic with me and was able to like teach me things. And I was just so grateful, because I know my first journey, I didn't have any of that. Like she was still an ER nurse. She was working all the time, like so in another city, right? Like, so I didn't have her. But like with this one, I did. And I was just so grateful. And I, again, that just really empowered me to be like, this is what happens when you support somebody versus leaving somebody alone to themselves. Like, I was able to really appreciate that journey. I was ready for it. It became a beautiful, like I was so honored to be there, and I was so ready, in that moment. And it was amazing. Like, and I just feel like that's how caregivers should be looked after.
No, I agree. So what kind of activity, like what kind of things did you do to support your grandmother? Like, because you talk about like your mom helped prepare you for this is what end of life is going to be. This is what to expect. But what were the kind of tasks that you're doing? Because you've got two little ones. About how much time are you spending supporting, if you don't mind me asking? Because that's one of the things unpaid caregivers spend a lot of time, and it increases as the need increases.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did overnight shifts, so my husband worked, so that I was at home with my babies. And then, when he came home, we would go do the evening shifts, and sit at the bedside and do that part. And we just loved it. We read like the favorite books and the music, and, just sat there and just, provided any support we could. And I sang, my favorite songs that I remember her singing to me when I was a little girl, right? Like those things. So it just became beautiful.
Well, and that's important, because people will say, well, I wasn't a caregiver during that time, because that's my family responsibility. But that is, in the essence of the word, care. It is kindness. It is demonstrating kindness. And so the time spent is, it is as much for that individual as it fills you. It fills you with having that, spending that time together, and it allows for the closure. I mean, we know what it's like to have lost our dad very suddenly and not to have that. And so to have that time, and that can be very uncomfortable for people.
Yes.
And because death is very uncomfortable. It's the unknown that scares people. And
yes. But like, if you're prepared for it, it doesn't have to be like, it can be almost as beautiful as, having a baby as it is transitioning out. Like, these are two very similar things, like impactful things. And again, but I think, we just need to, educate and prepare one another, and so that it can be that beautiful. As much as like support with all those, things, my mother also helped me, like, taught me how to, like, roll grandma over, right? Tips and tricks, like on how to do the sheets,
things that none of us are trained for. You're like, I need some training. What's the easiest way to get off, for us, it's a depends. And, my mom is training me because no one else trained us. She was like, just do it this way. And I'm like, okay.
Right. Like you're struggling, your mom comes in, oh, no, honey, you got to do like, and you're like, oh my goodness, thank you. Right. Or even how to get them to the bathroom, or to support them in that way, or like the changes that'll happen in their diet or the meds, or just managing that all, I can't imagine somebody going through that, not having any help.
Yeah. And how long did you do that for, if you don't mind me asking, then Em?
Oh my gosh, my grandma, probably about a month for her. And the other ones were different timelines.
Sure.
So
did you just kind of figure it out as you went? Also, I'm sure your mom helped you, but I know with my mom, she liked things done a certain way, or if I innovatively come up with something else, because I just remember very similar to helping my toddlers put on their pull-ups. It's very similar. So that kind of transitioned over also. So I think that's kind of the fun part too. You're like, okay, mom, let's work together. How can we do this the best way? Because I wasn't trained at all. Zero.
No. And then you have different family members, because we had diverse families. So you have different family members that you're switching, you're doing shifts, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's how they did it. Like, okay, we're doing this now. Sounds good.
So your grandmother did not have to go into skilled nursing or equivalent nursing home. She was able to stay in place, or what was that?
Yeah, exactly. She was able to be at home. So she was always, in a walker and a crutches. I mean, that girl, gosh, she started having like hip surgeries and knee surgeries probably when she was like 30. So, I always remember her, and all the things happened, like infections and just everything wrong that could have gone wrong went wrong with her. So she was always, in a chair and stuff. And my dad was a carpenter. And so he built her, when she couldn't manage a big house anymore, he built her this beautiful small home, customized exactly for all her needs. In floor heat, the big, bathrooms, like all, and it was small and it was perfect. And so, yeah, with the family, we were able to manage, her in that space. And, we were all very close. So, we got lucky, with her. She wasn't one of the ones that had to, transition to a long-term care home.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting that everybody pulled together, and the fact that your dad was so insightful, because we've talked about like JJ and Dexter getting ready to build a home, and they've talked about, okay, how, like, in times I think when I've looked for homes in the past, we haven't thought about aging and how these steps are going to be a problem and that sort of thing. And so now JJ's got this whole, like, we're going to build a home, and she tells her husband, we're going to build it to age, like to be old. And he's like, what?
It's so crazy, Cindy. I'm like, it needs a no entry shower. We need no steps at he was like, okay. And because I'm just turning 50 and he's just 63, he was like, when are you planning on us dying? I don't understand. I'm like, we need to be prepared. I need to be able to get my wheelchair down this hall.
Yeah, 100%. You know what my dad did for my mom after that? He went and built her a house. Like, he finished it when I was 16, and it is all like age friendly, wheelchair friendly, big doors, all the things. Yes. And they've lived in that house for almost 2 decades.
Because I know that, we want to age in place, we feel like we're in good health, but if you're not prepared and you start I look at our house now and all these steps and everything. I know my mom's home, even the 2 steps that went from the sunroom to the kitchen, just that was hard to navigate. It was dangerous. And that's awesome though.
Even things as small as having the same flooring from room to room, from carpet, as opposed to having carpet and then hardwood. I think about my own home. I'm looking at everything in my own home now, thinking I need hardwoods in this bad boy, the whole thing. Jason just looks at me like, you've lost your mind. And I'm like, nope, because he's been sick before and he's had knee surgeries. Because people think, oh, well, I only need to worry about when I get older. And the reality is he's had 2 knee surgeries. He's had shoulder surgeries. He'll tell you about his 100 shoulder surgery or 100 surgeries. But every time we didn't have a bathroom that really could accommodate his recovery. We didn't have floors that really accommodated things and that he might trip. And so I think those are so important. I love that your dad was so insightful and in supporting your grandmother and then even themselves ahead of time.
Yeah. Because that kind of transitions into my next, like my mom, again, having her surgeries. Those were my next caregiving, journeys. And, ladies, I'm going to tell you, nurses make the worst patients.
And moms. How was it? Nurses and moms. How
was
it
caring for your mom? Goodness. Mother, I love you if you ever listen to this, but wow. Like, and she'll be the first one to tell you too. And it was her first one too, right? She had all these expectations. She was going to get all this stuff done. She's, it's okay. It'll be like bed rest. And, she just had all these expectations. She was going to fly through it. And then, it was like her first knee replacements, her first surgery. And she's had, multiple since then. And she was just so disappointed at the amount of energy it took her body to heal. She was just so, and, her mental health dropped significantly. Like, I was like, Mama, you have to do these exercises. The doctor says you have to move your knee and do all the things, right? And I'm like, no, you have to. Like, I know you don't want to. I'm like, come on.
You're like the mom. Emily knows how that is. We'll talk about PT.
Right?
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, and she knew it, but she was just so, I don't know. She was just so disappointed in herself for how she was feeling. She had expectations she was going to coast through and life was going to be grand. And it wasn't. And it was hard for her. And so mentally that really was a challenge for her, which, led to it being really challenging on me because, I'm having to pick her up every day and be the sunshine, in her room and, do all the things. things. And I remember, going outside and sitting between the vehicles one day and just crying, so she wouldn't see me because I love my mom so much. And I didn't want her to know. But I was just, it was so heavy on me, just her emotional state, and yeah, my dad was, working away in Africa at that point in time because he kind of worked all over the world. Yeah.
Wow,
So
but
he
he's
was
cool.
away. Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's cool. He can do it. But like, yeah. So that was, again, my role. I was like living with her at this time, to support her. And it was just so heavy on us. Yeah.
So isn't that interesting? Because your dad's working, your mom, I'm assuming she had to have the surgery.
Yeah.
And so, there was no discussion about like, should he come home? This is interesting. Was there a discussion about should he come home, or it's just like, hey, Cindy's got it. Like slam dunk.
I got it.
Because you're the only girl. That's the other thing. You're the girl.
Yeah. Where are my brothers at this time?
We've got one in Sweden. Where's the other one? Where is
Rocky? But he worked away too. He was, on oil patch, right? And then Alberta, you're gone, right?
Yeah.
And my dad, he was in Africa for like a 2-year big, huge project. And he wasn't just a laborer, like he's kind of running the show down there, right?
Yeah,
and
he's a big dog.
It's not like he could just like come home either, right?
So Cindy's got it. You just
Cindy's got it,
Cindy.
Yeah.
Cindy, so how did you, I know that when I moved in with mom and helped and took care of her, those lines between mother, daughter, and then daughter, caregiver, that was our biggest transition that we had to get used to. Like, how did you handle that?
I think after seeing how my mom did it with her mom, I realized that you just kind of roll up your sleeves and you get to work, and this is just what needs to be done. And there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, there was just, she did it, so I'm going to do it. Right. Like mother, like daughter. And so it just had to be done. Like there's, and you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Things are going to come up that you have to deal with that might not be pretty, get them into showers or, helping them, sponge bathing them and stuff like that. All of a sudden, things got real personal.
Yeah.
Was
there ever any rebellion? Like, was your mom like, I'm not doing that? And you were like, oh, yes, you are. Was there any of that, Cindy?
Yes. When it came to the exercising, she'd be like, no, I don't want to do that this morning. I don't want to. And I'm like, Mom, like doctor said, it's on the notes. Like you have to,
And I get it, Cindy. We would be at physical therapy and mom would be like, I'm not doing this. And all of a sudden I'm the cheerleader. And I've never been a cheerleader. Like I've always been sports and stuff, but never been that role. So going from, and she's very stubborn, she wants her way or the highway. So did your mom experience that also?
Yes, my mother. Oh my gosh. I come from a Dutch family. We are stubborn, right? Like, and and it's our way or the highway. So yeah, definitely there was some confliction, and we both had to compromise, and figure out our own journey and take it day by day, step by step. And we came out of it really, really well. And we survived.
So you still talk to each other after. So this is interesting because notice that this is a caregiving journey that has a beginning and end, because caregiving is not just, most people, I think caregiving is like towards end of life. And the reality is it's not. It's not. Intermittent caregiving. Like in our lives, we will have bouts of times when we take off our hat, as you take off the daughter hat and you put on the caregiver hat.
Yeah.
And because at some point with your daughter, even with your baby, you put back on your mama hat when things settled and you were able to be a mom. And then you had to take off daughter hat, put on caregiver hat, and then you put back on daughter. And the relationship keeps moving. So then you have, who's next in line for Cindy to take care of?
So then, we move back into the grandparent stage of things, because they're getting older at this point. And so we lost a couple grandparents next. And so my mom's dad and my dad's dad would be the next ones. And they were just so beautiful. There's something about a grandpa, like, I don't know what it is. They just hit differently than grandmas. Like they're just, I could sit beside them and talk about, the old days, right? The war days. They both survived the war back in Holland, right? And then, I don't know some about going, in that end of life stage where they like to revert back to those old days, of the youthful them growing up. And so the stories change very much to back then. And I was just one of those kids that would just sit by them and just listen. They were just some of my most favorite people. So, again, but I was like ready. They were very different journeys too. One was like almost like an orangutan type, like he was just very like all over the place, during his end of life stage. And that kind of took me by surprise. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like, whole type of different, to get them to the bathroom and back, right? Like, so they were all very different, in those journeys. But yeah, I think, with my dad's family, because my mom's family is just amazing and beautiful, and they just come together so nicely. My dad's family, a little bit larger, and there's just a little bit more family conflict with them. Okay. And so trying to manage the aunts and uncles in that situation was a little bit of a different story. That was a big pain point for us, because not all the aunts and uncles necessarily got along.
So you were a mediator, caregiver. So that was,
Well, let me ask you this. I can remember when my grandmother passed, I was older. We were in our 20s. We were so lucky. We were very close to Bird. Like that was our nickname for her. Aww. And so we were I have a photo of her in here, and love her. But I remember I was very close to her. The three of us were, but very close to her. And I had very much an opinion about how things should be. And her children were like, you're a grandchild. And I'm sitting there thinking, don't care. And like, she's my person, because I was very close to her. And so did you ever experience that, especially considering you're a grandchild and you're in the place? Did the grandkids have a voice in the decision-making process? Does that make sense?
That does. And no, we didn't, No. So it was really just, I just wanted to be there and help in any way I could, in any way that they would let me between their conflicts. And, I just kind of sneak in the back and be like, we'll just set them out in the hallway. And I'm just in love of my grandpa right now. Yeah. But yeah, no. And, it was hard because it just that family dynamics, that was hard. I just felt that was a little unfair too, we're in this moments where it should be, I've experienced an end of life with, a couple other grandparents at this point, and it was this beautiful, transition and caring and loving. And these ones were a bit more conflicting.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes, you talk about your appreciation for life and family, and when you've been through it, and then you see when they can't resolve those issues. And we met with someone, I guess it was Tuesday, and what she talked about, her husband was a physician, and he talked about when you get to that end of days, that end of time, end of life, he called that the precious time. And it is the precious time, and that it's coming to an end. You need to value that. And you need to it's hard sometimes, but if you set it aside and just look at this as that end, to make the best of it and appreciate it. So it just sounds like you were like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm just going to do my Cindy thing. I'm doing my Cindy thing and I'm done. So.
Yeah. Just move over. I'm coming in.
So you get through this one. I'm assuming that this grandfather also passes away, but you talked about an aunt as well.
I did. Yeah. I know that one's tough. She was young, she's my parents' age. And so, cancer just took her too young. So she was my uncle's beautiful wife. And I that end of life phase, my uncle, he's so gracious. Like, he was her primary caregiver. He was her rock. He was her life. And, even now he's just so lonely. He misses her so much. But watching him, look after her in that, stage was just so inspiring. And I think my dad took a lot out of that too. I'm just going to segue real quick. So when my mom had her neck surgery, my dad, really stepped up. He was home, and all of a sudden he became the primary caregiver. And he was like, move out of the way, Cindy, I'm coming in, And I was like,
forget the traditional male role model.
And he's cleaning. And I'm like, but Dad, like that? And
Who are you?
So I think, it's good to see people caring for others, and this is kind of how I want to change the culture of our world so that it's normal, so that we can see it and help each other, because you start learning things and you learn compassion and empathy. And so, like when my aunt, when she was at her end of life stage, my uncle, he was just so gracious at the end, when she took her last breaths, he just almost, it was like a relief for him that she was no longer in pain. And it was like, because he's seen her struggle for so long. But for me as a niece, I was heartbroken. Like I almost went the more selfish route. Like I lost my auntie, and I bawled. Like I was so upset. So we were very polar opposite, it was just very interesting. But that one it hit different. She was too young. So
hey ladies, I need to interrupt for just a second to share about the Sisterhood membership. It's basically a sale every day. And the best part, it's free. Here's the details. We're partnering with our friends at Benefit Hub and other care partners to save you money. With over 200,000 participating companies across the US and abroad, you'll find discounts at your favorite local stores, huge savings on vacations, amazing deals on home, auto, and supplemental insurances, and everything in between. Go to confessionsofareluctantcaregiver.com to sign up, and then definitely tell your friends about it. They can join too. Trust me, there's a discount for everyone. And don't forget, it's free. Okay, back to confessing. So how did you provide care for, because it sounds like you provided support to her husband and to her, but also to him, because sometimes caregivers need caregivers.
Yes. Well, at this point, I was no longer living in Rocky, so I was a distance caregiver, long distance caregiver at this point. So I didn't get the opportunities that I did with the other ones, which was hard. That's a whole different story. Being a long distance caregiver, like moving from being right hands-on to, I'm like, oof. So it was more listening to my dad support him. My dad, supported my uncle. He was like the big one, and so then, I supported my dad. My dad would tell me things, and I'd be like, okay, Dad, this is great. Like, go help him with his cats. He was a farmer, like, so I'm cheering my dad on, my dad's cheering my uncle on. And then, at the end of the life stage, we all came together to, really support her at that stage. And, in that stage, like, I mean, she had decided it was a little bit different than old age passing away. She had decided, enough is enough. She's over it, no more. And that was just really hard. I don't know. It was different because you it wasn't old age taking her. It was a cancer. So for me, that one, it was just different.
Do you think go ahead, Jay. Sorry.
Well, no, it's interesting. It's the ripple effect of caregiving for caregivers. And so it really is just listening though. And I know with our experience, our Aunt Jane, who we love, like I know one of her days she brought over, I think they were antler ears for Emily and my mom, but there were little things like that. She decorates our mom's room at the skilled nursing facilities, but I think there's a lot of that benefits even the CNAs and the nurses there. She's a caregiver for caregivers who, it's the most amazing thing. And so to hear you say your dad was a caregiver for that caregiver, his brother, but for you just to give him that support, that's so important because it has trickled down. It is now like what you said, it's kindness. That's it. It's just kindness.
Yeah. And as a long distance caregiver, I mean, that's my role now is checking in, listening, being that listening ear, and jumping in when I can, right? Like it's a different role than what I'm used to. That's for sure. Yeah. And then we kind of transitioned into my last one, my Oma, who was just this May, which was heartbreaking. She was the last of my grandparents to pass away. She was different too, because she went into a long-term care home where my other ones never did. So this was kind of new for the family.
Okay. Same.
Like, wow, that
nobody does that in our family.
Different, different type of conversation. And it being my dad's family, again, there was, those conflicts in that family amongst siblings. And so then it was like, when is it time for her to go? When is the right time? And that timing is different for everyone, like half the family was like, now is the time. She needs this. The other half is like, no, we got this. It was like this, like kind of a battleground for a while. Everybody wanted what was best for her, but everybody thought, what was best was something different entirely. So that was interesting to kind of watch play out amongst them. And again, I wasn't getting involved there. I was just kind of on the sidelines being like, how can I help? What can I do? Let me pour some coffee.
But what it does is, I think when you have a seat and you're an observer, and what I think it does is it influences your decision about how you're going to make decisions in the future. Like, I don't want that. Like, and so I think this is important because we haven't talked about your kids. Like, I see, like, you've got 3 kids or 4?
Two.
Oh. Why do I think it was 3?
She was really jumping ahead.
She was in and out. So how do you have these conversations? What are your conversations like with your children about all these different caring experiences? Like, what are you passing to them? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, great question. Basically it was like 3. I just threw my husband in there because
that's true.
Teeny tiny family. He had never experienced a death of a loved one before ever until he married me and all of a sudden got thrown into my giant family. And so it was like, lining up my kids and my husband and sitting them down and being like, he said, this is how it happens, and these are, the things. And, I think I was very lucky because I was so hands-on that I got to kind of share that journey with them. My mother and I, we were event planners back in the day. For about a decade. So, bring on a funeral. We got that, right? And so.
That's another event, people.
That's another fun event.
Different flowers, different invitations, but we got her, and we were very involved. Like, I did all the PowerPoints at every funeral. My mother did all the beautiful flower arrangements, of course. And, so we were from start to finish, my kids got to see us, involved in every stage of it. So they were really, involved as well, because, they were along for the ride. So, I'm hoping that impacts them, as they, grow and, start their caregiving journeys as well.
Role modeling. Well, I'm going to tell you, I think you and your husband are probably the best role models for your kids in how to care and serve others. Because clearly this is so interesting. This has impacted you. These experiences have driven you to create and do something with it.
Yes.
So this is what's so interesting.
I think maybe out of frustration or looking at something and saying, I think I can fix
do
this
better. And so you tell us about how Team CarePal came, like the idea, like, we need this. Tell us how that came about.
Yeah. So at the very, very first, like when my mom's mom passed away, my first grandma, again, because I wasn't really, when my daughter was born, I wasn't really thinking I was a caregiver, that there was anything special about that. I was a parent. It wasn't until my mom's mom passed away. And, and this is confession time, right? Like, I confess something.
Yes.
Okay.
Confess it all.
Okay. But don't tell anyone.
We will not air
dream
this
of it.
part.
Team CarePal.
We don't edit.
Okay, so the idea came at the end of life stage. Keep this in mind and be empathetic for me. End of life stage, I'm sitting there and I'm like, there's got to be a way better than this, managing the whole family and the supports and all the things, right? And, I came up, these were apps started to come out at this time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there should be an app. Why isn't there an app? Like, there should be an app for everything. Why isn't there an app? And so I came up with this idea that I was going to create this app. And, we kept talking about it. And then we nicknamed it. And it's not a good nickname. It was called the Death app, ladies. It's the nickname.
It's okay.
The Death app for so long. And because then, my next loved one, end of life stage. And I was like, the Death app that I brought up, we should do that. So then we would expand on it while we were sitting there, in those moments and what we're going to do. And
I love this.
A terrible name.
I think so that changed maybe if you got a business strategist and they said, maybe that's not the best of ideas, Cindy. Maybe we should change that name.
Okay. So Cindy, I have
for a long time until we hired our app developers. And that was our project name for about a couple of weeks. And they came back and they were like, listen, we can't name it this. It's got to be something different. And I'm like, well, I know that. It's just what it is right now. I'm not actually going to go through with that. But
just, you get what we mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had my friend and I, because we travel all over Southwest Virginia because of where we travel and we go and talk to people. We have a thing, we want to write a book called Death Row Food, and it's all the places you should eat before you die. And so it sounds so bad as a name, but I'm thinking we love food, and this is food to die for. And so we think about, if I could have the last meal, we thought, what a great book. It'd be a great coffee table book. And it's so wrong on so many levels. So I really align with your death app.
Oh my Lord.
Great idea.
I got to reel her back in again, Cindy. I got to reel her in.
So you thought about this app for a while then.
Yes.
And then what was the trigger? You're like, I'm going to do it.
The trigger. It was the pandemic, ladies. So, my babies grew up and they left me, and I will always hate them for that, because they broke my mom's heart.
Grow up. Yeah.
They broke my heart. So I was really down and depressed over this, because, I loved being a mom. I love being a mom. Still mom, they're just broke. But and then I went back to university. I was like, I'm young, I'm going to take life by the horns. I went back to university, and this was, before the pandemic started. And then we were like, oh, let's move. This will be fun. My husband got like this opportunity. We wanted to go to a bigger city. This will be changed. So like a week before, life shut down, we were like, yes, we'll move, sign on the dotted lines. We're going to sell our house, all these things. And then the pandemic hit. So there's like this mass chaos in the middle of everything. And so we ended up, we had to sell our house, and it was so nuts. But we ended up in this tiny condo in Edmonton, and the world was shut down, and I'm doing university online. And, my husband comes to me, and all this light shone in our system of these family caregivers, and just, how they were being impacted. They weren't able to go in and see their loved ones, or all of a sudden they're having to be at home, look after their loved ones, because there's no one to look after them. And, but there was no support for these families. Like there's just so much wrong with what was going on. And I was heartbroken over it. And my husband come in the room, and he was like, honey, he's like, if you're going to do the death, now is the time. Now is, people need this. And I was like, oh, you're so right. And it was like, just roll up my sleeves and get to work. And I got to work. And I quickly, when we dove into the competitors and everything out there, I quickly realized, and this is where the name change kind of comes from, you couldn't just build on one phase of a caregiver's journey. I very much realized, you can't just support one part of it. It has to be the whole journey in its entirety. And it has to be flexible for everybody, the young caregivers, the old caregivers, the in-betweens, the disability, aging, illnesses, all of it. It couldn't just be one thing. And so then it grew, and it grew big.
Oh, it's totally
an amazing app.
That's the thing, the silver lining of the pandemic is that it made us all stop and reevaluate. And so I'm going to tell you, it's time for sister questions. Okay. But I do want to say, we're going to have information about Team CarePal, the app, in the show notes. You have got to go and check it out. It's on I'm going to say this is a promo. It is on Amazon and are on for iPhones and for Androids. So go check it out. It's just recently launched. So it's time for sister questions. Look at JJ. You had a silent clapping.
Me first.
Silent clapping.
Emily's going first.
So different right there.
I'm like, she's clapping. Yes. I'm like, you're going to need to make noise so that the listeners together.
Sorry, I was so excited.
Okay. All right. Emily.
Yes.
First question.
Cindy. Oh, as a mother also, our children are probably about the same age. I have a 22-year-old and then 20-year-old twins. So how did you do this? I hear you. I was like, Lord, when you said, oh, well, I watched her at night. When did you sleep?
Oh, good point. Good question. When did you sleep? She's a sandwich generation mom.
Yeah, and I'm in my 20s. You remember back then when you could stay up for days without sleep and you could just do it?
Emily did that in her teens.
We managed, my mom and I, we figured it out together. We supported one another, we took turns napping, and yeah, you just get through it. You just do it, ladies. But again, I had support. I had other family members to come in and help me.
Yeah. Well, and your husband, let's not leave out your husband. Let's talk about Jim. He absolutely, I'm assuming, helped you so that you could serve others. He was a caregiver to you so that you could be a caregiver to others.
I'm going to be honest, ladies. I had to mold him into that position because, like, again, he came from like not knowing anything. And, you know, when my grandma passed away, he was just so confused. Like, you know, like he's like, okay, I guess I'm, you know, cooking dinner and looking after the kids. Cause, you know, my wife's with her family and they're doing a crying thing. And like, this is going to be a while. Like, he was so like, whoa. So yeah, I really had to like educate him. And that's where that communication skill came in of being like, these are my needs right now. And I'm going to need you to, you know, deal.
Oh,
so
I love that. He's resilient. You built resilience in him.
Yes, he is.
Oh, that's so wonderful. And so, okay, that's fantastic. I love that. I like that you said you had to mold him into it. That's fantastic. JJ.
Okay, mine's a fun question. So we came from a large family too, Cindy, and I heard you say after church, it was go to our grandma's house, our grandma Burr's, and we always had lunch after church. We always did something with all of our cousins because we were all there. So after church, what was your favorite meal or favorite activity? Like, what did you guys do that you look forward to as a kid?
Oh my gosh, kickball on the front lawn of my Oma's house.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Honestly, and it was no favorite meal. It was meatball soup and sandwiches every time. Like, and we were only allowed 3 meatballs per bowl. Like, you know, because we would steal them all. Like, you know, and when you have a big family, there's only so many meatballs Oma could make.
I'm assuming there's a recipe. Yeah. I'm assuming there's a recipe.
There is a recipe.
Is this a family secret, or could we include it in the show notes?
I could include it in the show. Yes, I will share it with you ladies.
Show notes.
Show notes. Anybody who makes it, we're going to be like, whoever makes this, please send a photo, and you can have as many meatballs as you want.
Yeah. Yes. All the meatballs. And then kickball, because we had so many cousins. Like we all lived, you know, it was the family farm, right? And we were all within like a bike ride of each other, I swear. And, you know, through the fields, and we would all gather and baseball, kickball, you name it.
Oh, that's where we grew up.
Yeah.
We were the traditional. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. No. You were traditional.
You know, where like the commercial came on, you know, at 10 at night or 11 at night, reminding parents like they have kids somewhere, like the 80s parents. Like, because we lived outside on the farm until they come out honking the horn.
Yeah.
Like, when it gets dark is when you come in. When it gets dark. And you know what? I am so sorry for all the future generations that don't get to play until it's dark.
Yeah.
Because your parents didn't have to worry about where you were. All right, last question, because I'm getting on the end. Okay. What is your favorite guilty pleasure? The thing you do just for yourself.
Honestly, right now, today to survive, it's probably comedian shows. Friday night.
Laughter.
I search after laughter. I need laughter in my life. It's such a good mental health activity. So I will sit all alone on a Friday night in the couch in the dark and just giggle at comedians, random comedians, just searching for laughter. That's
awesome.
Oh, love that.
Yeah, that feels so good. That's a good way to end, is laughter, because it is the best medicine. And it is actually one of the 4 things we always focus on. You'll notice we have laughed a lot today.
Yes.
So honestly, Cindy, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're clearly a sister. You're clearly a sister, our Canadian sister. And so thank you so much for coming. And thanks everybody for listening. I hope this has really been helpful to you. And I guess I'm just going to close it out. Until we confess again, we will see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.